So again, yes, thanks very much for taking the time to do this here. I'm really loving the new album. So
Thank you.
I hope we can
Thanks.
talk a lot about that and talk about your writing. And we can't talk to you without mentioning a bit about the Britpop days and all that, the early days, if that's okay. So Sleeper have just released the long lost album, This Time Tomorrow, recorded between 1990 and or 1999 and 2000,
Yeah.
and then it was finished during lockdown. Why did you decide to go back and return to the album and finish it off?
I think we'd always planned to finish it at some stage, and when we came back and we were going to make an album, we did the Modern Age. The plan was to use some of this material then, but I felt like I really wanted to write new stuff. And so we went ahead and did that, and we loved what we were writing, and it just came together really well. And then we kept going back to this material, and we've gone back to it for, you know, over the years, of the last 20 years, looking at it, and loved it. But it was quite a project to get it up to scratch, whether it were to the point where it was releasable. Lots of the songs didn't have completely finished lyrics. They needed extra instrumentation. So it was a big deal to do it. And then the whole lockdown thing happened. We couldn't perform, we couldn't do any live shows. And it just felt like the most lovely distraction to really sort of pour ourselves into that and get it finished.
And when you looked over the material and when you pulled it out of the hard drive, were you surprised about the quality of how good the songs were?
Yeah, I mean, we've listened to them usually when we were quite pissed late at night. We don't get up and have a listen and go, oh God, I love that one, that's brilliant. We've got it at some stage, and then we go, oh, yeah, but it'll need this ding and that ding, and it'll take ages, and we just moved on. But yeah, I think the thing that was important was whether they had some effect on us to listen to. So especially a song like Tell Me Where You're Going, I listened to that over the years, and it always made me kind of feel something, or make me feel quite emotional to listen to it. And I think if a song can still do that after so long, then it's worth taking and, you know, finishing and putting out.
Yeah, well, that song is a great song, and we were lucky enough to premiere the video on Access Noise. It's one of my favorite Sleeper songs now. I know, and it would have been a shame if no one had ever heard it.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's one of my favorites. I just yeah, I really love it.
Yeah, and it's a great catchy chorus.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that song because so the chorus vocals are the original 1999 2000 vocals, and the verse vocals are new, so they're the ones that I've done now in this little attic room, in fact.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were happy enough, you didn't want to change the chorus at all, you were just happy enough with it?
The chorus is fine, and also the vocal, the words were finished. So in the verses, the lyric wasn't finished, so it had lots of the lines that are in there now, so we took as much as we could that was from that moment, but just some of the lines weren't finished, so I had to re-record the verses for it. Yeah.
And what was the process of finishing off the songs over the lockdown period?
We just took them one by one, and we kind of almost sort of got a chart of what each one needed. Some of the songs we couldn't alter at all because we didn't have access to any parts, so they were completely finished, and all we could do is kind of like, you know, sort of master them and get them sounding as good as we could, but we couldn't alter any of the mixes or add anything to them. But the ones that we could, we kind of went and just added instrumentation first, got the backing track sounding as good as possible, and then sort of, you know, finished the vocals. But it took I guess it took about a couple of months altogether to get it done.
Well, like I said, it's a great album. I've been really enjoying it, and it's very diverse in sound. You know, there's a couple of tracks. Let's Start a Fire, Cab Song, are far removed from anything the Sleeper's done before. I mean, they have a real jazz feel. You know, what inspired those tracks?
I don't know, it's interesting. I think when I sort of first began, I was kind of like, my very first band I sang in a jazz band, right, just to make some extra money when I was at college. But it was those tracks in particular were tracks that were going to be part of a solo album that I was making. So the kind of the plan was to make them as different as possible from what had gone before and what Sleeper had been doing. So that was really sort of intentional. So there's lots of difference in this album in terms of how it came together and where the tracks were pulled from.
Well, even because of that, it still flows very well. You know, you wouldn't think that. You would think it was all done run about the same time. You know, which is great. obviously we'll have to talk about We Are Cinderella, which includes a backing track by George Michael, the legend.
Yeah.
How did that happen? I mean, that must have been amazing.
It was amazing. I'm an 80s pop kid. I grew up with listening to George Michael and Wham and all of that stuff. It was a huge deal. We were recording those tracks at his studio in Highgate, and we were working with James Jackman, who he was collaborating with at that time. And George let us use his studio in downtime. So he'd be in and out kind of recording constantly. And then when he had a few hours, he wasn't going to be using it. We kind of like pile in and start on the songs that we were doing. And he would come in sometimes and he heard that song and he just really liked it. And he kind of produced my vocal on it. So he sort of sat with me and he comped the vocal. And what that means is when you do different takes for a lead vocal and you sort of knit together the best bits. So he would sit with me in the control room and knit that vocal together, and he did that. And then it got to the end of it and he was like, this could really use kind of a nice low textural backing vocal in the last two choruses. Do you mind if I do that?
Do you mind?
That would be amazing. And he did it, and he was like downstairs. There was like a little basement room where you did the vocals in his studio, and I remember him sort of kind of calling him, is that okay? Does that sound all right? And it sounded gorgeous, obviously. But yeah, it was like I think it's always it's a lovely thing to meet people that you're kind of you admire, but also to get to see them working in the way that they work. It's so interesting. He was very sort of precise, and incredibly knowledgeable. So that was, it was really lovely.
Yeah, he's an absolute genius. I'm a huge fan, and he's amazing in the studio. He produced most of his own work.
Absolutely.
It's a great track, and you can just about hear his vocal underneath yours. Yeah.
He's quite high. I mean, he was literally like, I'm going to put a texture under this because it'll support the vocal and it will sound really nice. It was very much his kind of decision about where that sat. And
yeah. And you're not going to go, no, George, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I just want my vocal on it.
Exactly.
So who is Poor Henry?
Oh God, Poor Henry. I really like that track because I think that's kind of is very much in the tradition of sort of sleeper story songs. And it's just about, I've always been sort of fascinated by these sort of tragic relationships, and he's just one of those, I think. And it was just one of those stories that came out. I think I was very much in the phase of I sort of begun writing as well. I began sort of writing my first book at that stage, and it was kind of another of those real sort of kind of lyrical story songs that were part of Sleeper's kind of trademark, I think, in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's again another great track. My favorite track on the album has to be the final song, Hard Hat. What can you tell me about that song? I love your vocal on it. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's what started. I think I just had a very sort of like basic version of it on guitar, and James Jackman, who was working with George through that period, he sort of put that backing track together. And I think it's a beautiful track, and it's very unlike, again, like you say, it's unlike anything I'd done before. And I think it's a lovely finisher.
Yeah. What would you say your favorite track on the album is? What stands out for you? Means the most?
I don't know. It changes. I mean, they've all got different reasons for me to sort of like feel very connected to them and love them. Tell Me Where You're Going, just because that gives me that sort of emotional punch. The George track, because it feels like such an amazing thing to have on there. And I love New Year's Kiss because that's got my daughter singing on it as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Nice. And Andy's singing some backing vocals. We kind of put that all together. It's actually got the opening line from the original recording, and then the rest of it is re-recorded. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you must be really glad that it's out now and people can hear it after it being, in the vaults, so to speak, for all this time. Yeah,
I really do. It's kind of, again, you live with it for so long and it's there, and you kind of, it just felt like such a shame not to have those tracks out there for people to listen to. And the reaction from fans has just been really lovely. Yeah.
And for anybody that's going to watch this, fans, anyone can buy it on the Sleeper website.
Yep.
In vinyl, CD, all formats.
All formats. Yep.
Right.
It's all there.
Although what I did notice is it's not on any of the streaming sites yet. Is there any plans for that yet, or?
Yeah, I mean,
is
it
there
will
even-
go. It will go on streaming eventually. I'm not sure. We haven't even set a date, but we haven't thought about that kind of stuff. But we just wanted it to be something that we did and was for our fans. And you know, streaming is a complicated beast, isn't it, for lots of bands? And I'm sure lots of people that read your stuff and look at your videos will know about the whole sort of broken record campaign. And
Yes.
in terms of what bands make from streaming, there's a huge misconception about it, mostly that bands make a lot of money from streaming, and usually they don't. So for us, it was just like, we're going to do it. We're going to take control of it. It's going to be something that belongs to us, that we put directly out to our fans. And that process, just by doing that, meant a lot to us to do it in that way. And I know it's convenient. I mean, we'll put it on streaming eventually because it's just so convenient for people to have.
Yeah, well, I mean, I buy records, I buy CDs, but it's still stream stuff, you know, because it is convenient. But I always like the physical thing. And when it's safe to do so, do you plan to take the show or the album out on the road and perform some live shows? I know you planned to go a tour last year with Blue Tones. Obviously, it fell through. But could that happen again?
Yeah, and there was quite a lot planned for last year that didn't happen. Lots of festival stuff and another sort of tour that we're going to do of our own. But yeah, definitely, I'd love to come play some of these songs live. I think it would feel amazing to do that. I miss it. I miss it. Just before this lockdown, we live in Brighton, and I was just down at the seafront, and there was a band busking outside, and I felt quite emotional just watching, you know, live music being played in front of me. And there were people sort of socially distanced, but kind of sort of dancing and kind of like just feeling something, watching this happen. And it's kind of because this process has gone on so long, you almost forget how much you're missing it, what it means to be in a room with other people and kind of feel that uplift of music right in front of you. It's really powerful. So yeah, I'm missing it a lot.
Yeah, I can't wait to get back. But obviously, you've been in lockdown. Have you found time to write any new Sleeper songs?
Yeah, so we've been writing as well, because again, it's like a way to travel somewhere, isn't it? You can't, in this whole process, you can't get out of your own head. We're so constrained. So to write a song and be up here in this little crazy little attic room recording, you go somewhere else. So I think creativity, and it isn't easy. I don't think. I think it's quite hard to be creative in the midst of it all, because it feels like such a fog. But even so, we've written stuff, and it's been it felt like a very sort of freeing thing to do in the midst of it all. Yeah,
I look forward to hearing them down the line. As I said, I've been enjoying your book, by the way. For this year, I started reading your book, Just for One Day, Adventures in Britpop. And what I love about it is I can relate to a lot of it, because your stories and your love of music really comes across. You know, I could, especially at the start, talking about taping the charts on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And the method you use, and it was such an important thing. You thought you were the only person doing it, but everybody was doing it, and getting the cutting out the DJ and all that there, it was great.
But it was kind of like a communal thing, wasn't it? You go to school on Monday and everyone had been taping last Thursday's episode of Top of the Pops, and in the top 40 rundown. It was everything to me when I was sort of like a young teen, before even before I started buying records. I think that was making those sort of compilation tapes and listening back to them. And there was no I didn't really sort of think about what went together either. I was just kind of, Bananarama next to Bowie. I didn't care. It was just what do I love? What are the songs that I love, and what will kind of, take me out of my kind of suburban existence to somewhere other. Yeah, it was really important, I think.
Absolutely. And it was just, I'd forgotten all about it until I started reading your book, and I just went, yeah, that was amazing. I used to love doing that.
Yeah.
And then also talking about band records, the story about you buying 2 copies of Eye of the Tiger.
Oh my God, Eye of the
Tiger. Guilty pleasure?
I'm not guilty about that in the least. I remember going to see the Rocky film. I can't remember which Rocky it is. Maybe I can't remember which Rocky that
I don't know.
Is in. But yeah, I bought it once. I think it was in Oxford Street somewhere, in the big HMV in Oxford Street, and I took it home and it was warped.
Yeah.
But by the time I was just so gutted. I was putting on the, and you know when you used to buy vinyl and it was warped, and it happened kind of, you know, fairly often actually. And I went and bought a second copy, and I have no regrets at all. Every word off by heart. Don't test me.
No, it is a great song, and I could just picture you when you get back doing the live shows covering that.
Oh my God.
That would be great.
It's all happening now. I'm just like, oh. How we do it? Yeah, brilliant.
And you just mentioned Top of the Pops, and you know we all love Top of the Pops, and we all watched it growing up. What do you remember about the first performance for Sleeper on Top of the Pops?
So it was in between it, and I was so excited. I was just blown away by the fact that we were going to go and do it. It's strange. I don't know if you ever went to the studio or you ever went to see a recording of it. And it's strange because you go inside TV studios and you see the bones of them, and there's something quite ordinary about it. So it kind of takes away the whole sort of glamour of it. And the studios kind of, it felt so kind of little, and the sort of dressing rooms are kind of all these little sort of breeze block small rooms, and it kind of feels there's an ordinariness about it, but this incredible history, this incredible innate glamour that it has. So it was kind of a mixture of things, and we were nervous as well because it felt like such a big deal and we didn't want to screw it up. But it was I don't know, it's a huge thing, isn't it, to sort of spend your whole sort of youth and childhood wanting to be on that show, and then to finally get to do it was a big thing. And also, I mean, my mum was kind of taking it seriously, but then it's like, well, my daughter's been on Top of the Pops, so that must be a real thing now. So I can stop telling her to get a shop job.
Can you remember who's on Top of the Pops with you? What other bands?
I can't. Isn't that weird? I can't remember who was on that one. I think, God, I don't know who was on it. It might even have been Celine Dion or someone like crazy.
Right.
And you know, because you remember how it was kind of, it was such a mixture, wasn't it? Especially at that time, there were all these kind of indie bands in the charts, and then all these sort of kind of big superstars that would turn up as well. So you'd find yourself with, I remember sort of we were on with Barry White once. It might even have been that episode. And I remember sort of going up to Barry White, and he was saying, "Can you put your hand on my chest and hear how deep I am when I sing? You can hear the vibrations." I was like, it's just this is bonkers thing. You sort of there with your hand on Barry White's chest, and okay, that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Well, people, I mean, Sleeper came out in the 90s, and people look back, you know, with great nostalgia of the 90s and the whole Britpop era. It's like our era's 60s. But what was your best memory about the time, and what would be your worst?
Oh God, it's really hard to say. I mean, the best thing about it, it just felt like, we kind of look at it a bit sort of rose-tinted spectacles now, I think, especially everything that's happened in the last while. And it feels like a time of constant summer and optimism and sort of, you know, excitement, just these guitar bands taking off everywhere and taking over. You know, I felt like those bands could do anything. So it was incredibly exciting for us. It's incredibly exciting to be part of it. Going on tour, getting to play with bands like REM, all that kind of huge stuff was great. But it was also it was quite dark in its own way. Kind of had its own darkness. It was very that it's been written about a lot about this kind of sort of the drugginess of it, the competitiveness of it, and I don't think it was really welcoming to women in the way that it should have been, or perhaps even thought that it was. So that was surprised to me, I think.
Yeah, because right about that time there was you, and there was Justine, and there was Karis.
Yeah.
Big women in that there genre with all these men,
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? It's kind of, I think it wasn't, I think women were just sort of trying to find their way, in guitar bands at that point. It was kind of new. It felt sort of quite exceptional, and it felt quite important. But there were lots of other women around as well that were kind of, we were still viewed very much in terms of our gender and what we looked like, and we were patronized and we were sort of criticized in ways that the men in bands at that time weren't. And it was difficult because I think we were literally just sort of trying to navigate our way through. You know, as a kid, I didn't grow up with sort of female guitar icons because there weren't hardly any. It was kind of, you know, I was just someone like Kate Bush, who I loved, you know, was like the first woman in 1978, I think it was, to be #1 with her own song that she'd written. You know, it's 1978 that happened. So it was extraordinary, the kind of difference in terms of men and women in this industry. And I think we were breaking new ground in a way that wasn't appreciated, frankly. Yeah.
So whenever Sleeper started getting success, you didn't find fame as easy as possibly you thought it would be, or as good?
It was hard because the difficulty came from areas that I wasn't expecting. And you know, as a kid growing up, you think being famous is going to solve everything, right? You think, oh, just be famous and that'll be amazing, and that's the thing that you crave. But that's, in a way, that's the least interesting part of it. So the good parts for me were sort of recording and playing on stage, having people sing your song back at you that you've written. It's extraordinary. There's nothing like that in the world. I don't think I'll ever sort of experience anything like that in any other sphere of my life. But the sort of the weird sort of criticism came from the indie sector, which is what really surprised me.
Yeah, it's weird. Have you found things different the second time around since the band got back together and put out the last couple of albums?
Yeah, I mean, the industry has completely changed. When they just aren't, those gatekeepers don't exist anymore, thank God. Yeah. So that's great. And I think because we're older, we don't care so much about any of that stuff. And also it's just different. We're doing it very much on our own terms. You know, we're not self-conscious in the way that you can't help being when you're a bit younger. You know, I just don't think we give a shit in that way. We make music that we love, and that's everything. And there's just so much more joy about it, you know. And you get that at the live gigs. I mean, it blew us away, I think, when we first went back on stage, and this sort of reception from an audience and that sort of connection you get, you know, that I felt really just felt great. Yeah.
Well, when Sleeper broke up, you became a novelist, and you've written a few books. Obviously, we mentioned the Britpop one. Do you get the same pleasure from being a novelist as you do writing songs?
No.
No.
It's kind of what I felt like it's kind of what I wanted to do after the band split. I just wanted something I could do on my own, you know, that I was kind of just belonged to me, because everything that you do in a band, it's like there's just so much kind of arguing and back and forth, and then you've got the whole industry that you've got to sort of make peace with as well on top of it. And writing a book is just the privacy of your own little space and your own head, and that was fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. But then after a while, you just kind of, it's like, I just don't want to sit in a room in my joggers for the rest of my life, you know, when I go out and do things. So you don't get that kind of instantaneous sort of feeling that you get with music. You know, you write a song and you can write a song in half an hour and go, oh my God, I absolutely love that. And also the turnover period is quite fast. So with books, it can be, you write a book and it doesn't come out for a year or even more. Those wheels turn quite slowly. But yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky to have been able to do those things.
Yeah, well, as I said, I'm really enjoying your Britpop book. I'm halfway through at the moment. I've got you've just got the college and you're sort of starting a band.
Yeah,
that's where I am at the moment. I think I probably know this from reading your book, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Out of all the music in your collection, which artist or band do you have the most albums by?
Oh God, is that in my book? Can you tell?
No, you haven't actually said it in your, but there's a certain artist you mentioned quite a lot.
I don't know. I'm honestly, you're gonna give me a clue. What's it begin with?
Milton Keynes.
Right. So Bowie, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up with loads of Bowie. That's correct. Yes. I think now, is that still true? I don't know, but yeah. It was really important. But yeah, that Milton Keynes gig was amazing. And I went to see him in Milton Keynes when that would have been 84, maybe 83, I don't know. And then we played with him. Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't play with him, play with REM at Milton Keynes. Sorry, yeah.
And what have you been listening to recently that you could recommend to anyone watching?
I've mostly been listening to my teenage kids' TikToks.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a concept I haven't really grasped yet, TikTok, you know.
It's interesting the way they sort of digest music is completely different than we would have done. So
yeah.
growing. So it's just clips and singles, and not even doing call them singles anymore. It's just like, here's a track that I love. I've been listening to a lot of Big Thief, a band called Big Thief, which are really gorgeous, and kind of, I feel like I want stuff that's quite blissful at the moment, if you know what I mean. Just a kind of sort of, there's a sort of gentleness. I can't really deal with anything really sort of hard or fast or sort of guitar-y. I just want to kind of something a bit sort of blissed out to kind of feel, you know, again, that sort of escapist quality.
Yeah. Just chill.
Yeah, a lot of chill music.
Well, I just noticed the KLF have just put a new album on Spotify, and I think it's a bit more chilled, so you can check that out.
Okay. I'll do that.
It's one of their sort of ambient albums. I think I've just heard a snippet of it so far, but I must check it out. What's next for Sleeper then? The album's out. What's next? I know it's hard to plan anything, you know, but
it's so hard to plan, isn't it? Everyone's kind of, I think isn't that the hardest thing? Not the hardest thing, but for just not knowing what the future is at the moment, not knowing how it's all going to pan out for the rest of this year and onwards. I mean, new music, there will be new music, and we'll be back out there playing as soon as it is feasible to do so. Yeah.
Good. It's really exciting. Well, I love the album. It's great, you know, so it's really, really great that you are back doing it and there's more to come.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that's been the great thing about coming back, was that it was unexpected. So it hadn't been something that I'd kind of planned to do. And for it to sort of bring new music up, I think that's, yeah, it's been a lovely thing to be part of.
And is there any books in the horizon either? Have you been writing anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like to do that as well.
Right.
So I think, yeah, I have been writing something as well.
Good. Well, that's my questions finished, Louise. Really appreciate. I really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate the time doing this. All right, and good luck with the album.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
All right, bye, Louise.
Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye.